Master LEED V5 in 1 hour. Welcome to Master LEED V5 in 1 hour, a complete rapid reference guide to the LEED V5 building design and construction rating system. This presentation covers every category, every prerequisite, and every credit in LEED V5, BD, and C, drawn directly from the USGBC LEED 5 reference guide for building design and construction, November 2025 edition. By the end of this presentation, you will have a working knowledge of the entire system, what changed, why it changed, and how to navigate it strategically. The built environment generates nearly 40% of global carbon emissions, and LEED V5 represents the most comprehensive overhaul of the rating system since its founding. Where previous versions measured sustainability through isolated credits, LEED V5 introduces an integrated, impact-driven framework. Every credit maps to at least one of three overarching goals: decarbonization, quality of life, and ecological conservation and restoration. This is not an incremental upgrade, but a structural reimagining of what green building certification should accomplish in the climate crisis era. Every credit in LEED V5 is tagged to one or more of three impact areas, which is the most important structural change from LEED V4. This changes how project teams should think about certification strategy. Rather than pursuing disparate credits in isolation, LEED V5 rewards holistic, systems-level thinking from the earliest stages of project planning. The impact area framework also helps teams communicate the value of sustainability investments to clients and stakeholders in accessible terms. LEED V5 introduces several significant changes that design teams should understand before beginning a project. The most impactful changes for most project teams are the combination of mandatory whole building lifecycle assessment, a mandatory 25-year carbon projection, and electrification requirements for platinum. Together, these three shifts make LEED V5 substantially more rigorous on carbon than any previous version. Additional changes include a new integrative process category, expanded equity and resilience requirements, and a future source energy metric that rewards electrification. Energy and atmosphere is the largest credit category in LEED V5 for new construction, reflecting USGBC's judgment that energy performance is the highest leverage intervention for reducing building-related carbon emissions. The new project priorities category rewards context-specific and program-specific sustainability contributions not captured by the standard credit framework. Certification thresholds are 40 to 49 points for certified, 50 to 59 for silver, 60 to 79 for gold, and 80 or more for platinum, with mandatory credit minimums required for platinum. In LEED V5, platinum certification has more thresholds. Platinum now requires 2 mandatory performance gates, a minimum performance level in the electrification credit for new construction, platinum, which effectively requires full building electrification, and a minimum performance level in the enhanced energy efficiency credit, which demands very deep energy performance improvements beyond code. These mandatory minimums ensure that a LEED V5 platinum building is genuinely on a path towards zero carbon operations. You cannot compensate for inadequate energy performance by excelling in easier categories. This presentation is structured to mirror the LEED V5 reference guide, moving through credit categories in order. Within each category, prerequisites come first since they are mandatory and set the baseline, followed by credits. The slides serve as a visual anchors for key concepts, while the depth is in the speaker notes. The integrative process category is entirely new in LEED V5, created to embed sustainability thinking into the design process from the earliest stages, rather than treating green features as add-ons. The IP category's prerequisites establish 3 mandatory analytical foundations: climate resilience, human impact, and carbon emissions, and must be initiated in pre-design, not during construction documents. Treat them as design inputs, not compliance documentation. The Climate Resilience Assessment prerequisite requires every LEED V5 project to document the climate and natural hazard risks facing its specific site. Each project must identify 2 priority hazards, provide a quantified risk assessment using IPCC shared socioeconomic pathways, and demonstrate that the assessment actually influenced design decisions. Notably, this prerequisite feeds directly into the Enhanced Resilient Design credit, which rewards addressing those same priority hazards through design, making this a compliance checkpoint that also generates earnable credit opportunities. The Human Impact Assessment prerequisite is one of the most significant equity-related requirements in LEED history, mandating that every project team systematically analyze the social context of their project. The assessment covers 4 categories, including supply chain and construction workforce protections, occupant experience, neighboring community impacts, and environmental justice considerations. Many data sources for this assessment are publicly available: census data, city planning documents, EPA mapping tools, and walk audits. And the deliverable is a structured narrative connecting social context to design decisions. The carbon assessment prerequisite stands out in LEED history because the project team does not perform the calculation themselves. USGBC performs it using data submitted through other credits and prerequisites. This approach makes carbon accounting systematic and standardized across the entire certified building stock, and every LEED v5 certified building will have a documented 25-year carbon projection. For projects subject to carbon-based building performance standards, the projection must overlay applicable carbon caps and estimate annual fines for non-compliance. An owner attestation requirement ensures that decision makers are accountable for the building's projected carbon trajectory. The tenant guidelines prerequisite addresses the central challenge of core and shell projects. The base building team designs the building, but tenants make decisions that determine much of its actual environmental performance. This prerequisite creates a structured handoff document, ensuring tenants understand that the base building provides what it expects from their fit-out and how sustainability coordination is managed. It is also the foundation for the Green Leases credit, which rewards core and shell projects that contractually bind tenants to sustainability commitments. The Integrative Design Process credit rewards demonstrating a genuine integrative design process, not just assembling a diverse team, but structuring the process so that diverse knowledge produces better outcomes. The credit requires a multi-perspective design charrette and integration of LEED goals into the owner's project requirements, which creates a mechanism for accountability through design and construction. This is one of the most accessible credits to earn if the team starts early, with a modest documentation burden relative to the value of the structured process. The Green Leases credit is one of LEED v5's most innovative credits and one of the highest value opportunities for core and shell projects. A contractual document that maintains a building's environmental performance across its occupied life cycle. The credit covers a menu of best practices across energy, water, indoor air quality, and operational transparency, giving flexibility to negotiate with tenants while earning meaningful credit. An additional bonus rewards projects that execute signed green lease agreements with tenants, not just develop a template, creating a direct financial incentive for property owners to negotiate sustainability terms into real leases. The location and transportation category recognizes that a building's sustainability cannot be fully evaluated in isolation from its urban context. Where a building is located and how people travel to and from it has profound implications for carbon emissions, land consumption, biodiversity, and community equity. All 5 credits in this category are pure credits with no prerequisites. For urban infill projects, many of these credits may be earned as a consequence of site selection rather than specific design interventions. The Sensitive Land Protection Credit rewards the most fundamental site selection principle. Don't build on ecologically sensitive land. For previously developed urban infill sites, this credit is often satisfied automatically. For greenfield projects, teams must conduct a careful site inventory covering floodplains, prime farmland, species habitat, and water body setbacks. The 100-foot setback from water bodies and 50-foot setback from wetlands are firm requirements, and all special status vegetation must be conserved with no exceptions. The Equitable Development Credit expands LEED's definition of location beyond transit access to include the social and economic justice dimensions of where and how a building is built. Notably, the brownfield remediation pathway is particularly valuable because it rewards projects that improve contaminated sites, aligning building development with environmental cleanup. The credit also recognizes affordable housing and transit-accessible neighborhoods, equitable construction workforce development, and apprenticeship programs, extending LEED v5's sustainability framework to construction workers, not just building occupants. The Compact and Connected Development Credit is the highest value credit in the location and transportation category, offering multiple combinable pathways, density, transit access, and walkability. The transit pathway rewards proximity to high-frequency public transit with higher performance thresholds corresponding to genuinely robust urban transit service. Walk Score, an independently calculated metric available at walkscore.com, provides a verifiable measure of walkability for any U.S. address. For suburban campus projects, a project-sponsored transit option provides a pathway through committed shuttle service. The Transportation Demand Management Credit connects LEED v5 to the transportation sector's carbon footprint through two components: a transportation demand assessment that quantifies commuting-related carbon emissions, and design and policy requirements for parking reduction and active travel facilities. For parking, eliminating all parking earns the most credit. Though substantial reductions of 30% or 60% are achievable for most urban projects, the bicycle facility requirements, including secure long-term storage for 5% of commercial occupants or 15% of residential occupants, are higher than most code minimums. The Electric Vehicles Credit reflects the rapid electrification of transportation and offers building owners a way to future-proof their facilities. Smart EV chargers, compliant with Energy Star and time-of-use price signals, can shift charging load away from peak and demand periods, benefiting both owners through lower demand charges and the grid through reduced peak load. An EV readiness option allows projects to install conduit and electric panel capacity for future charging infrastructure, which is a cost-effective approach for budget-constrained projects since retrofitting is significantly more expensive than installing during the initial construction. The Sustainable Sites category addresses the environmental quality and ecological function of the land surrounding the building. LEED v5 has significantly updated this category to emphasize biodiversity, climate resilience, and the equity dimensions of site design, particularly around the urban heat island effect and its disproportionate impact on lower-income communities. The category contains one prerequisite focused on construction phase site protection, followed by 6 credits covering habitat, outdoor access, stormwater, resilience, heat islands, and light pollution. The minimized site disturbance prerequisite applies before the first shovel hits the ground and continues throughout the construction process, requiring compliance with the 2022 Construction General Permit regardless of site size. Inspection frequency requirements are specific and enforceable every 7 calendar days during normal construction within 24 hours of any rainfall event producing 0.25 inches or more, and daily during active dewatering operations. Conservation of all special status vegetation is a hard requirement with no exceptions, and invasive species management applies both to removing existing invasives and to avoiding new invasive plantings during site restoration. The Biodiverse Habitat Credit addresses the biodiversity value of the land surrounding the building, with native vegetation restoration requirements informed by ecological research showing that diverse plantings with a minimum of 10 species are necessary to support the food webs that sustain wildlife. The pollinator habitat requirement calls for native flowering plants in grouped patches, which can play a meaningful role in supporting local bee and butterfly populations, even in urban settings. An optional bird-friendly glass pathway responds to the commonly overlooked issue of bird-glass collisions, which kills approximately 1 billion birds annually in the United States. The Accessible Outdoor Space Credit requires that 30% of the site area be accessible outdoor space and includes a community element requirement such as publicly accessible space, cultural expression, or acoustic protection that elevates the credit beyond basic open space provision to genuine neighborhood contribution. The Rainwater Management Credit uses a local percentile approach calibrated to regional hydrology with the 90th percentile storm event as the performance standard. A valuable synergy exists between this credit and the Enhanced Water Efficiency Credit, as storm water captured for reuse can contribute to both simultaneously. The Enhanced Resilient Site Design Credit directly connects to the Climate Resilience Assessment prerequisite by requiring that the 2 priority hazards identified in pre-design be addressed through specific design measures. This creates a direct chain of accountability from assessment to action. A key strategic insight is that the hazards designated in the prerequisite determine what is required for this credit. In drought-prone regions, for example, designating drought as a priority hazard is both accurate and strategically advantageous because the drought pathway in this credit aligns with water efficiency measure teams are likely pursuing anyway. The Heat Island Reduction Credit includes a tree equity option new in LEED v5, reflecting research on the inequitable distribution of urban tree canopy and its connection to higher heat exposure, higher cooling costs, and worse health outcomes in lower income and minority communities. The weighted calculation approach allows teams to combine high reflectance roofing, shaded paving, and green roof patches to achieve the target even without covering 100% of hardscape. The Light Pollution Reduction Credit uses a lighting zone framework from rural dark sky preserves to high-activity urban districts with directional backlight and glare requirements that become stricter for luminaires mounted closer to the property line. The water efficiency category has been restructured in LEED v5 to address both conservation and the carbon emissions associated with water treatment and distribution, making the connection between water and energy explicit. The category contains 2 prerequisites, establishing minimum performance baselines, and 2 credits rewarding monitoring and enhanced efficiency. For projects in water-stressed regions, the water efficiency credits represent a critical certification strategy component, and projects with access to reclaimed water infrastructure will find significant credit opportunities in the water reuse pathways. The water metering and reporting prerequisite includes an annual reporting commitment to USGBC, a significant long-term obligation that requires building management to have systems and processes in place to collect, verify, and submit data. Alternative water sources such as rainwater harvesting or gray water recycling must be metered separately so that total building water use can be accurately reported. The minimum water efficiency prerequisite establishes fixture flow rates that are more stringent than many U.S. state and local plumbing codes, with WaterSense labeled products recommended as a straightforward way to meet or exceed the thresholds. The Water Metering and Leak Detection Credit offers significant operational value beyond its LEED contribution with real-time data access requirements through a building management system, cloud service, or app that ensure meters function as active management tools rather than passive recorders. The Enhanced Water Efficiency Credit is the primary performance credit, with the whole project approach allowing teams to combine fixture efficiency, outdoor water reduction, and alternative water sources into a single integrated calculation. Stormwater collected for the Rainwater Management Credit can count towards water reuse pathways here, eliminating the need to invest in separate infrastructure for each credit. The Energy and Atmosphere category is the engine of LEED v5's decarbonization agenda and the single largest credit category in the rating system. Every prerequisite and credit maps to the decarbonization impact area. The category's structure reflects a coherent pathway from minimum compliance to deep performance. 5 prerequisites establish the floor, and 7 credits reward increasingly ambitious energy and carbon performance above that floor. For platinum certification, mandatory minimums in the electrification and enhanced energy efficiency credits make energy strategy the unavoidable starting point for any serious certification effort. All 5 energy and atmosphere prerequisites must be met before any credits can be pursued in any category, and they should be treated as design constraints rather than compliance tasks. The 5 prerequisites are the operational carbon projection and decarbonization plan, minimum energy efficiency, fundamental commissioning, energy metering and reporting, and fundamental refrigerant management. The operational carbon projection and decarbonization plan prerequisite requires teams to project the building's operational carbon over 25 years and develop a plan for reducing it. For projects subject to building performance standards, such as New York City's Local Law 97, this projection must overlay applicable carbon caps and estimate annual fines for non-compliance. The minimum energy efficiency prerequisite establishes the energy performance baseline using future source energy as the metric with an electric conversion factor of 2.0 that reflects projected grid improvements and changes the economics of electrification in favor of heat pumps. The fundamental commissioning prerequisite requires third-party commissioning of all mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems before occupancy to verify that they operate as designed. This is the baseline from which the enhanced commissioning credit builds. The energy metering and reporting prerequisite requires installation of whole building energy meters and a 5-year commitment to reporting annual energy use data to USGBC through the ARC platform, creating a binding operational accountability obligation. The fundamental refrigerant management prerequisite prohibits CFC-based refrigerants and requires a refrigerant inventory with leak checks for all new and existing equipment on the project. The electrification credit is the most strategically important credit in LEED v5 and the single biggest differentiator between a certified green building and a truly decarbonized building. The credit requires a 1.8 COP weighted average for heating systems, which effectively rules out electric resistance heating and requires heat pumps as the primary heating technology. A low temperature exception permits supplemental fossil fuel backup heating only during extreme cold events, which is a practical accommodation for cold climate projects rather than a license for gas primary systems. For core and shell projects, an electrification readiness option rewards forward-thinking design, including oversized electrical service and conduit runs to future equipment locations, even when full electrification is not feasible in the initial fit-out. The Reduced Peak Thermal Loads credit rewards envelope performance and building systems that minimize the instantaneous maximum heating and cooling loads placed on HVAC systems and the electrical grid. As buildings electrify, their peak thermal demands become grid loads. A building with massive peak heating demand on a cold winter morning creates a grid spike at exactly the worst time. The top performance tier essentially requires passive house level performance, achievable with triple pane windows, super insulation, advanced air barriers, and thermal bridge elimination. The air leakage test required for the highest tier should be performed before drywall installation to allow identification and remediation of leakage paths. The Enhanced Energy Efficiency Credit is the most heavily weighted single credit in LEED v5, making it the highest leverage action for advancing towards gold or platinum certification. The credit offers 2 paths, a prescriptive path based on progressive implementation of ASHRAE 90.1 2022, additional efficiency requirements, and an energy simulation path that is more flexible for projects with innovative efficiency strategies. The highest performance improvement threshold requires deep integration of envelope, mechanical, and lighting efficiency, the kind of performance that demands early-stage integrative design to achieve cost-effectively. The renewable energy credit is one of the highest value items in the energy and atmosphere category. The future source energy metric benefits on-site renewables because each kilowatt hour of on-site solar effectively displaces twice its site energy value, reflecting projected improvements in grid efficiency. For projects in constrained urban environments without adequate roof space, long-term green power agreements with renewable energy generators provide an off-site alternative with a 5-year minimum term. The enhanced commissioning credits post-occupancy review, conducted 10 to 12 months after occupancy, is the most valuable element of commissioning and the most frequently overlooked, consistently delivering energy savings of 5 to 15% in the first year alone. The Grid Interactive Credit is the most forward-looking in the energy and atmosphere category, rewarding buildings that can shift their loads in response to grid signals, charging EVs, preconditioning thermal mass, or running dehumidification during periods of abundant renewable energy. This capability becomes increasingly critical as the grid transitions to variable renewable sources, and buildings in areas with active utility demand response programs may receive financial incentives for participating. The Enhanced Refrigerant Management Credit addresses one of the largest near-term climate opportunities in the building sector, as current HFC refrigerants have global warming potentials in the hundreds to thousands, while natural refrigerants like CO2 and propane represent reductions of 99% or more. The materials and resources category has been substantially overhauled in LEED v5 to center the issue of embodied carbon, the carbon emitted during the manufacture and transport of building materials. For highly energy efficient buildings, embodied carbon may actually exceed operational carbon over a 60-year service life, and LEED v5 responds to this reality by making whole building lifecycle assessment a prerequisite and offering significant credit for embodied carbon reduction. Core and shell projects earn more credit in this category because they have greater relative control over structural and enclosure systems where embodied carbon reductions are concentrated. The Planning for Zero Waste prerequisite establishes the physical and operational infrastructure for waste management, collection space, labeled containers, and occupant programs, recognizing that without adequate infrastructure, sustainability intentions fail in practice. For multi-tenant buildings, the collection infrastructure must accommodate the diverse waste streams of all anticipated tenants. The Quantify Embodied Carbon prerequisite is one of the most significant new prerequisites in LEED history, requiring a whole building lifecycle assessment that immediately raises the bar for materials, thinking across the industry. Investing in a high-quality LCA at the prerequisite stage pays dividends when pursuing the reduced embodied carbon credit, which uses the LCA results as a baseline. The Building and Materials Reuse Credit recognizes that retaining existing structural elements is the most carbon-efficient strategy in the materials hierarchy, avoiding emissions associated with both demolition and new material manufacturing. For adaptive reuse projects, this credit can be a major competitive advantage, though a hazardous materials assessment is required for buildings constructed before 1980. The reduced embodied carbon credit is the primary performance credit for embodied carbon, with well-understood strategies including low-carbon concrete, using supplementary cementitious materials, electric arc furnace steel with high recycled content, and mass timber products that sequester carbon during growth and store it across the building's service life. The Low Emitting Materials Credit addresses VOCs off-gassing from adhesives, paints, flooring, and furnishings, among the leading sources of indoor air pollution in new construction, and connects directly to the air quality testing and monitoring credit, as buildings that specify low-emitting materials are more likely to pass post-construction air quality tests. The Building Product Selection and Procurement Credit rewards transparency across the material supply chain through environmental product declarations, health product declarations, and responsible sourcing documentation, using a scoring matrix that encourages teams to optimize across all three dimensions simultaneously rather than excelling in one while ignoring others. The Construction and Demolition Waste Diversion Credit addresses a massive environmental issue. U.S. construction waste exceeds 600 million tons annually through a waste management plan that identifies all anticipated waste streams, specifies diversion methods, and tracks actual diversion rates throughout construction. The Indoor Environmental Quality category addresses the conditions inside the building that most directly affect the health, comfort, productivity, and well-being of occupants. LEED v5 has substantially expanded this category beyond its traditional focus on air quality and thermal comfort to include accessibility, resilience, and equity dimensions. Building occupants spend approximately 90% of their time indoors, and the quality of that environment has documented effects on health outcomes, cognitive performance, and occupant satisfaction, making this category LEED v5's most direct contribution to human health. The Construction Indoor Air Quality Management Prerequisite addresses the reality that construction dust, moisture, and chemical off-gassing can degrade indoor air quality for years after occupancy if not proactively managed. Filters installed during construction must be replaced with fresh filters before occupancy to prevent re-release of accumulated contaminants. The Fundamental Air Quality Prerequisite applies ASHRAE 62.1 2019 ventilation standards, including demand-controlled ventilation in densely occupied spaces. The no smoking and no idling policies are policy-based requirements that should be incorporated into lease agreements to ensure ongoing enforcement across a building's occupied life. The Enhanced Air Quality Credit rewards MERV 13 filtration, a significant upgrade from the typical MERV 8 filters in most common buildings, which captures particles in the 1 to 3 micron range, including most airborne bacteria, fine dust, and smoke particles. CO2 monitoring with automatic demand-controlled ventilation ensures ventilation rates are calibrated to actual occupancy, avoiding both under-ventilation and energy-wasting over-ventilation. The Occupant Experience Credit is the highest value credit in the category, encompassing thermal comfort, daylight access, quality views, and acoustic performance, dimensions of indoor environment quality most directly linked to occupant well-being and productivity. The Accessibility and Inclusion Credit is new in LEED v5, reflecting the recognition that truly sustainable buildings must be accessible and welcoming to people of all abilities, including sensory accommodation spaces for neurodivergent individuals and others with sensory processing differences. The Resilient Spaces Credit distinguishes between passive survivability, protecting building occupants during an emergency without mechanical systems for 72 hours or more, and community resilience, which extends that protection to the surrounding community during heat emergencies, winter storms, or extended power outages. The Air Quality Testing and Monitoring Credit provides post-occupancy verification that indoor air quality meets health standards before occupants move in. The Project Priorities category is one of the most innovative additions to LEED v5, acknowledging that a single universal rating system cannot fully capture the sustainability contributions of every building in every context. This category gives project teams the opportunity to earn meaningful credit for sustainability achievements specific to their geography, community, building type, or mission. All project priority pathways must be approved by USGBC, which prevents greenwashing by ensuring that priority designations reflect genuine environmental or social significance. The Project Priorities Credit rewards context-specific sustainability contributions and will evolve over time as USGBC responds to new sustainability challenges and emerging science. Projects should check the current list of approved pathways at the time of registration. For projects located in areas with approved priority pathways, these credits can represent the difference between gold and platinum certification. The LEED AP credit rewards having a LEED AP BD+C on the project team, creating a financial incentive for professionals to maintain their credentials and providing project owners with assurance that the project has dedicated expertise in navigating the certification process. Understanding how credits interact is the difference between a compliance-oriented LEED approach and a genuine high-performance design approach. The carbon assessment loop connects the minimum energy performance, fundamental refrigerant management, and quantify embodied carbon prerequisites, which together produce the inputs for a unified 25-year carbon projection. The stormwater and water reuse synergy allows a single cistern and pump system to contribute simultaneously to both the rainwater management credit and the enhanced water efficiency credit. The electrification and energy efficiency credits carry mandatory platinum minimums, and they are technically synergistic. A high-performance envelope with low peak loads requires lower cost electrification equipment. A successful LEED v5 certification strategy begins with energy and atmosphere, which is the largest credit category and where the most important design decisions are made. Location and transportation performance is largely determined by site selection. Urban infill projects may satisfy many of these credits simply as a consequence of where they are located. For a gold strategy, focus on deep energy performance, strong location and transportation performance, meaningful embodied carbon reductions, and high indoor environmental quality. For a platinum strategy, the mandatory minimums in electrification and enhanced energy efficiency are non-negotiable starting points, and energy and atmosphere must be a dominant contributor to the overall certification score. The most common cause of LEED certification failure, or of missing credits that could have been earned, is starting credit work too late. The climate resilience assessment and human impact assessment prerequisites must begin in pre-design because they are designed to inform design decisions, and starting them after schematic design means missing the window when they can have the most impact. The commissioning provider must be engaged by the end of design development to participate in owner's project requirements development and design reviews. The post-occupancy phase is often under-resourced. The 5-year data reporting commitment and the 10-month post-occupancy commissioning review require ongoing facility management involvement that should be budgeted from the beginning. The most expensive pitfalls are not the ones that forfeit credits, they're the ones that cost money to fix. Starting too late on life cycle assessment means material choices are locked in before they can be optimized for embodied carbon. Starting too late on commissioning means problems discovered post-construction are expensive to remediate. Refrigerant selection deserves particular attention in LEED v5 because the combination of the fundamental refrigerant management prerequisite, the enhanced refrigerant management credit, and the 25-year carbon projection creates compounding certification implications. Engage the mechanical engineer on refrigerant selection in schematic design and not construction documents. Building performance standards represents a fundamental shift in how cities regulate building energy, moving from prescriptive construction standards to performance-based requirements with annual per-ton carbon fines for large non-compliant buildings. LEED v5's requirement to create a 25-year carbon projection with building performance standard overlay is explicitly designed to help project teams understand this financial exposure early in design. A project team that reviews the carbon projection and pre-design and sees millions in cumulative fines over 25 years for a proposed gas-heated building will make different design decisions than one that discovers this problem at construction documents. LEED v5 Platinum certification, with its mandatory electrification and deep energy efficiency requirements, is essentially a building performance standard compliance strategy. Green CE offers free LEED exam preparation resources and free LEED continuing education courses designed for design professionals, project team members, and credential candidates. Whether you are preparing for the LEED Green Associate exam or LEED AP BD+C exam, or simply need to stay current with LEED V5 for your practice, Green CE provides accessible, high-quality learning at no cost. Visit greence.com to access free LEED V5 courses, exam prep materials, and continuing education credits approved by the USGBC. Frequently asked questions about LEED V5. What is the biggest difference between LEED V4 and LEED V5? LEED V5 introduces an integrated impact-driven framework organized around three goals: decarbonization, quality of life, and ecological conservation and restoration, replacing the isolated credit structure of previous versions. The most significant new requirements include mandatory whole building life cycle assessment, a mandatory 25-year carbon projection, and electrification requirements for platinum certification. Where can building product manufacturers go to get help developing LEED V5 documentation, HPDs, and declare labels? Elixir Environmental specializes in helping building product manufacturers navigate the evolving requirements of LEED V5. Their team provides expert guidance on preparing compliant product documentation, developing health product declarations, HPDs, and obtaining declare labels, all of which play an increasingly important role in earning LEED V5 credits related to material transparency and ingredient disclosure. Whether you are new to these requirements or updating existing documentation to align with LEED V5 standards, Elixir Environmental offers the technical expertise to streamline the process and ensure accuracy. Where can building product manufacturers get help developing new LEED V5 courses for specifiers? Ron Blank & Associates and Green CE are leading providers of continuing education, course development for building product manufacturers. Both organizations specialize in creating AIA-accredited and GBCI-recognized learning content tailored to architects, engineers, interior designers, and other specifiers in the AEC industry. As LEED V5 introduces updated credits and workflows, partnering with either firm can help manufacturers develop compelling educational courses that inform specifiers about their product's sustainability attributes and support the broader adoption of LEED V5 across the market. When will LEED v4.1 sunset? LEED v4.1 is scheduled to sunset in 2032, giving project teams and building product manufacturers years to transition to LEED v5. While this timeline may seem distant, the shift to LEED v5 introduces significant changes to credit structures, material requirements, and documentation standards. Manufacturers are encouraged to begin evaluating their product portfolios and aligning their sustainability strategies with LEED v5 now, rather than waiting until the deadline approaches. Earlier preparation will help ensure a smoother certification process and stronger market positioning as LEED v5 adoption accelerates. LEED v5 has a coherent, comprehensive approach to building carbon that spans four distinct sources: operational energy, embodied materials, refrigerants, and transportation. The operational carbon pathway moves from establishing a baseline through the minimum energy performance prerequisite to eliminating combustion through the electrification credit, reducing peak demand, minimizing consumption, supplying clean energy, and participating in grid optimization. A building that maximizes performance across all 6 steps approaches zero operational carbon. The embodied carbon pathway through the life cycle assessment prerequisite and the reduced embodied carbon credit creates a credible framework for measuring and reducing materials-related carbon, and the transportation pathway through the location and transportation credits is the only part of LEED that addresses Scope 3 commuting emissions. The LEED V5 Reference Guide for Building Design and Construction, November 2025 edition, is the non-negotiable primary source. This presentation provides a rapid overview, but the reference guide contains the detailed requirements, calculations, and documentation guidance necessary for actual project work. For credential holders, the shift from LEED v4 to LEED v5 is significant enough that continuing education is important, and USGBC offers LEED v5 orientation courses and updated exam prep materials. Green CE also provides free LEED V5 courses and exam prep at greence.com. LEED V5 is not a compliance exercise, it is a design philosophy. The buildings that earn the highest ratings are not the ones with the most creative documentation strategies, they are the ones with the most thoughtful, integrated, systems-level approaches to making buildings that are genuinely better for the people who use them, the communities they are in, and the planet they inhabit. The climate crisis is the defining challenge of our time, and the built environment is responsible for nearly 40% of global carbon emissions. That means you are not just a designer, engineer, or project manager. You are a climate actor. Every project decision you make carries weight. LEED V5 gives you the language, the framework, and the metrics to act boldly. Use it. Push your climates toward net zero targets. Champion embodied carbon reductions even when it's difficult. Advocate for healthier indoor spaces and more equitable communities. Measure what matters and share what you learn. The green building movement was built by people who refused to accept the status quo. Now it's your turn to carry it forward. Higher, faster, and with greater impact than ever before.